Hi, hello, everybody. Uh, so it's just going to be me today, Matt from the Static Web Apps team. I'm a product manager on the team. Uh, I believe Thomas is down in the comments. It looks like he's watching on YouTube. But yeah, it's just me today, and I want to talk a bit about going beyond just the static web apps front end. Whether you're using React, and in my case, I'm going to be using Angular. But I want to talk about what that looks like, how to get to that point where you're adding serverless backends and your options and stuff like that. So, hi, Thomas. Yeah, definitely drop questions, and I am watching that. If you see me looking down, it's because I'm looking at my other monitor. Uh, so yeah, let me share my screen, and we'll get right into it. This is most likely going to be somewhat of a short one, but let's do it. See entire screen one. So I'm just going to take myself out of this so that you can see everything. I'm going to zoom in one more time. Okay, here we go. So I want to start with a bit of a story. So this app that I'm using here, this is actually something that I put together 4 years ago. I have not touched this repo since, but I put this together 4 years ago, and this was for, let me, while I'm talking, I'll do this. And this was for a build talk. And you see John Papa also presented with me. There he is there. This is for a build talk prior to the existence of static web apps. And what I was trying to do, there we go. So what I was trying to do was essentially create the scenario that we have in Azure Static Web Apps with just various Azure services. It started with functions, and I was using storage. You can see, like, here's the way too complex diagram of how everything works. I had like an Azure storage container where I was deploying the files from my Angular app manually from my editor. I was using functions proxies, which I don't think exist anymore, and HTTP triggers were my API endpoints going to a Cosmos database with bindings. Quite a bit going on, and so much so that there was like how to run this example sort of section. So what I wanted to do is there's a demo branch on here that starts with nothing, and I just kind of took that and I created a new repo from it so I could start from scratch and show you what this looks like. So let me get back in here actually, just to show you the app itself. Like I said, it is an Angular app, and super simple. Do the editor preview because that's fun. So it is just a list of products, right? This is actually a tutorial, one of the Pluralsight tutorials. I took this from one of those. I think Deborah Carrata was the person reading this, so shout out to her for this. This is totally her idea and everything. But yeah, so I started with this. This is all just pulling from a file. Let me stop this, and I will show you what that looks like. So here is the actual product list service, the product service, and it's pulling from, and it has this HTTP client that's actually pulling from the product URL. And if you go into the environment, you'll see that product URL is a JSON file. And if I do products.json, there it is. It's just a JSON file. It's an array of all the things that are rendered on the screen there. And what we're going to do is we're going to change that into using a serverless backend. We're going to use Azure Functions, and I'm sure, I know in my journey as a web developer, I started with like front end stuff. Back then it was jQuery, but like I started with these really early things, and got to the point where I was like, I realized, holy crap, I need some back end stuff. I have a contact form. That's what really did it. I have a feeling that's what it does, what does it for most people. But I had a contact form, and I needed to post content over. And of course, that got me into like the LAMP stack. And now I have to learn PHP. Well, in this case, what we were doing is we're going to use JavaScript for everything, and we're just going to use a serverless backend. I don't need a server, an Apache server that I now have to manage. So let me walk you through that. So again, just an Angular app. I'm going to stick in VS Code because that's how I roll. So we'll start with just creating an HTTP function. Oh, to make commands on the screen, if you go into VS Code, Control-Shift-P, screencast mode, and screencast mode will allow that. So I try to do that whenever I present so people can actually see what I'm doing if I'm going real fast. Yeah, there's a question about the Switch channels. I'm not sure, Thomas, maybe you haven't answered that. All right, so again, starting with nothing. Actually, let me show one more thing. I have nothing but like the Angular source and then this test directory that Angular, the ng-CLI created for me a long time ago. I'm going to hide myself again here so you can focus on what I'm showing. Yay. Okay, so back over here. So this here is the Azure Static Web Apps extension for VS Code. If you're not familiar with that, if you just come over here and you just search for Static Web Apps, it'd be your first result. And then you'll get this like view here. You can log into your subscription and it'll show all of your resources, and it hooks in some additional commands as well. So we're going to be focusing on this one here. We're going to create an HTTP function. Now, this is going to go off and do quite a few things. Once I click through this, we're going to choose v3 because it's not in preview, and we're going to call it product, or was it products? Products. As an S. All right, so now let me go back to my files and just show you what's created. You can see, here's the Git diff view, so you can get an idea of how much was added. There's now an API directory that was just created from the extension. There's now a .vs Code directory. In the API, this is like a complete function app. It has all of the pieces required to run that. It's like a separate project tucked into this API directory. And using v3 of the functions programming model, you get a directory with the config for the function. That's just all function stuff. And then it automatically opened up this index.js for me, which is our products function. So I want to show something else here. We get this magical launch config. This will help you debug your functions. And we get some tasks that also have the required steps to run your functions, your function app. Let me go back into index. Yeah, and then the other really interesting and incredibly helpful side effect of the extension is it will contribute this debug provider for static web apps. Now, if I click into this and just pick the defaults, you'll see now I have this swa run APM. So it just takes the folder name, and I'll just run it and we'll see what happens. So it's going to kick off a couple of different things. So this first thing here, you can see the name over here is funchost. The first thing is going to be funchost. We're going to ignore this. Thank you, VS Code. I love you, but that's not what we're trying to do. Okay, so this is, oddly enough, this is expected. Okay, so what we're doing is, if you notice, let me go back here. Angular runs on 4200, and the functions backend runs on 7071. However, when I use this debug config from the Static Web Apps extension, it's using the Static Web Apps CLI. Now, you will need to install a couple of things. If you don't have them installed, it's totally fine. It'll just error out and give you a button that just says, you need this, and you just click the install button, and then it just runs it. It's like an npm install command, so it's not a big deal. That's true for both of them. And then also over here, not found, right? So the reason this isn't found is if you look over at my environments, we're trying to hit API/product/product.json, but we're trying to do that on port 4280, which is our reverse proxy from the SWA CLI, and it has no knowledge of the Angular piece. Typically, Angular would intercept that route and serve up that JSON file. However, if I do API/products, just from our function app that we just created, you'll see that see like this is the default from the function. So if I go back into index, see it's triggered or function was executed successfully, but there's no query string. So that is what we expected to see here. So now I have my app running at root or index and my API running on API. So from there, let me just close the browser and you'll see that it shuts down our commands here. Everything is cool. From there, we are going to, normally we would connect to a database and put this into a database. But for this demo, where I'm trying to keep it under 20 minutes, we're just going to take this array from product.json, and we are just going to just get rid of all of this and this, because I really don't want that there. And grab this again. We'll just do that. Save our file. So now when we hit that /products, we're just going to get served up this body content, which is that array that we were expecting from the file. Now go back into debug. There's functions starting up. There's SWA starting up, waiting for Angular. And boom, okay. So we have done something wrong. So we have our products here, but for some reason that's not working. There's another piece we have to do here. Over in environments, instead of hitting API products.json, we need to change that. And then we'll just restart the debugging. Debugger. I wish there was like some sort of like that intro music. If I could play that intro music in the background while this is running, that would be awesome. There we go. Okay, so now we are pulling data from our API. So we have the three pieces, the SWA CLI, the functions core tools, the functions host, and then we have the actual Angular app that's running. That's it. that's the whole demo, right? Like that's, in just 15 minutes or so, we've gone from reading from a file to having a serverless backend. But at this point now we can actually deploy this thing. So we will create resources, static web app. Oh, we need to commit. That's right. All right, so now we have our changes pushed. Let's try that again. Create, and you've seen this demo before, but I'll go ahead and walk through it anyway. Choose the default name, East US, because I'm actually in Cincinnati. Angular is our default. Now, this is the one thing that's different. I have a different config in mine. I didn't put the project name at the end, so we'll just skip that and make it just straight dist. Of course, here we are again with this. And you'll also see the other config piece that was important was the API directory that we created. So that API location is there. All of this stuff should just magically work and be great. I will be honest with you though. The first part was the only part of the demo that I ran through. That was the one I was the most concerned about. But let's just go and check it out. So I have two browsers here. wrong one. So there is our APM app. Oh wait, no, APM demo. That's the one we want. Let's go ahead and open this in the portal. Now would be a great time for those questions as well, because I'm pretty much done with this. All right, so let's just browse to see if it's running yet. No, it's still deploying. Thomas, is there anything that you would like to add, that you would like to throw into the chat? I guess I can put my face back up here. Okay, we're just about there.
Matt, since you asked.
Yes, I knew you would be here.
Yes, of course, I was here the whole time. Oh, well, just it was perfect timing. I was gonna talk about app settings and runtime environment variables and build time environment variables. Do you want to touch up on that a bit?
Sure. Okay, so here's our running app, and just so you can see like our backend is running all of that stuff. Again, just by including the right directories and the right config in your GitHub Actions build, that just magically works. Okay, what were you? Put in portal. What were you looking for?
So like say my Azure Functions, say my backend managed functions, they rely on accessing a database. Where would I store any of my runtime variables that aren't necessarily checked into my source code? I don't want to check in my connection strings into my source code. So where would I do that?
I'm trying to remember.
Well, I think it's because you're already looking in the new UI.
Yeah, sorry. So here is where I would add the app settings, right? So these would be your environment variables that are, in the actual function app itself, and then of course that's specific to environment. So I think we've talked in the past about the different preview environments and stuff like that with like pull requests. But if you have multiple environments, you can set specific environment variables for those environments, and that stuff is injected into the environment for the functions backend, the API.
Yeah, exactly. I know sometimes we get some questions about environment variables, and then there's the mix-up between what are runtime variables and what are build time variables. So like here in the portal on the configuration blade, that is the environment variables that your managed backend functions have access to. Right. So if you have any APIs that access any downstream services, blah, 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 that's where you would set those. And in the Azure portal, when it comes to build time variables, the Azure portal isn't where you set those. So those are actually set at build time, whether you're doing that locally. That means having maybe an env for your local build, or if you're building and compiling your assets into the static files in your GitHub Actions, you can also set your environment variables there for that. Any variables that need to be injected into your React, Angular code in your case, or any of your front end static files. So yeah, I just wanted to call that out. Just saw a nice little opportunity to talk about that.
Yeah, and another thing that's also worth pointing out is that, so I'm showing functions. We're on the free SKU here, and this is just a managed function app. It's not something that I have to worry about. However, if you're on the standards here, on the standards queue, you can do more stuff, right? You can connect to different backends. There's a link button here, or link resource or something like that. And you can pick either like a function app that you have, like an existing function app that you have, container apps, an app service, web app, or even API management instance. So like the base piece is going to give you that serverless, the serverless functionality where you can do those JavaScript endpoints, but upgrading will let you do a little bit more configuration. Any other things you'd like to call out?
No, actually, I think we had the chance to answer all the questions in the chat. The screencast function of VS Code seems to be killer functionality for sure.
Yeah. So we did have a couple of things I did want to call out. So yeah. So real quick, we are continuing to do the this month on SWA. I think that one might not actually be updated quite yet, but we are working on getting that train rolling again with the this month on SWA.
It actually is. So yeah, that link will take you to our community website where we have the archive of all of our blogs. We also cross-posted it on like apps on Azure and dev.to, depending on where you're reading. But yes, that link does work.
Yeah, the other, let's see, I thought we had a bunch of these things in here. The other super important URL is the repo. I feel like we need to call that out every single time. You can talk to Thomas and I there if you run into issues or anything, or if you just, I don't know, have an idea. Come say hello.
Yeah. I think we're there basically on a daily basis across the team, answering any of the questions or any of the issues or configuration stuff. And did you talk about any of the I think I missed maybe the beginning, but did you talk about in our newsletter any of the community blogs or community events that are coming up?
Okay, I jumped straight.
I'm getting ahead of myself. Sorry.
I'm a demo guy. That's my jam. I went straight into just talking about the product and doing the demo. I did have a handful of other links. This is the JavaScript on Azure. I don't love this URL, but the JavaScript on Azure URL here is for our student hub that has like a lot of the events that are coming up. And then one of those events specifically, I have another aka.ms to put on the screen. This Chaos on Azure series, which actually takes you to the Hack Together, this global event that you can join. That has like all the information about the Hack Together event, web, JavaScript focus, and then I think registration is also on there. But if you created these beforehand, I'm not used to doing this. This will take you directly to the registration if you're interested in doing the Hack Together event, the global hackathon. And then go ahead, Thomas, other things.
Actually, can I share my screen for a second? I think it'll be easier if I just do that. Let me go ahead and share screen. Let's make sure it's the right window, or this one. Okay, and let me bring it up on screen. Okay, yes. So this is the link, the ak.ms/swa/this month. I can put it in the chat if anybody wants to access it as well. So that is this link. It's our community site with our archive of all of our newsletters. And in here, we're actually calling out a couple of the community blogs that happened over the month of July. So we had a great blog on Next.js, Azure DevOps, and static web apps. I read some of it, the translated version, but the original one is in Japanese. And then a few more community blogs, this one on apps on Azure about using preview environments for testing, and then deploying with static web apps with the new HTML preset. And then there were actually some really good videos across different conferences. There was the NDC Oslo conference where one of the speakers talked about static web apps, and Burke was learning Blazor with, I think it was John Galloway. I could be mistaken, but it's a great episode. Yeah, and a couple of those. And then these were the two events. I'm a visual person, so like I like to have it on screen. These were the two events that you brought up. Those being the Hack Together, which is a JavaScript on Azure Global Hack, students, beginners, even experienced developers, like really a 2 week sort of a boot camp learning journey. We built out the Contoso real estate application, or actually our advocates and a bunch of different folks across Microsoft built this really good reference architecture. And then, of course, today we are having our community stand-up, and next month we'll also have our community stand-up. But those are some of the events that are ongoing.
Yeah, I think next month we talked about that Contoso architecture getting Natalia on here. So if you'd like to see what that looks like, I think we'll have her come. That'll be the 24th, August 24th, and we'll have her come and show off what that looks like and explain a bit about it.
Yeah, that should be fun. I mean, I think I had the chance to look at it and dive into the GitHub, but I would love to hear Natalia talk about it. And talk through like the decisions that were made to figure out what components are we going to be using, because I think it's actually very accurate. From what I've seen from certain customer architectures, like it is sort of a superset of everything you could possibly need. So I think it's a great reference.
Yeah, super helpful when you're trying to figure out what to do.
Yeah, and if anybody wanted to go ahead and check it out ahead of time, we have the link in our newsletter as well.
All right.
Cool.
That's it. We have no more questions. Okay. So, takeaway. Super quick and easy to add serverless backends to your existing front-end apps. Especially if you're using the VS Code extension. That's not the only way to do it, but man, it makes it so easy, and it immediately adds the debugging for both the front end and the back end all in one step. So if you're already using VS Code, why not?
Yeah, and actually, like the other thing that often gets overlooked is that you get these preview, you get these backend managed functions for your preview environments as well, right?
Yep.
So it becomes like super convenient to have your full stack, static plus API, and then use the multiple different preview environments in order to have like these different variation staging aspects of your site, and then use that for like the team collaboration, making sure that the workflow works across the different branches you're working on.
Yeah, I'm hoping next month we can probably also talk about, like, I don't know, a way to go to production with those in a throttled way, using a feature that's coming. I think we've already mentioned.
Yeah, actually, I think next month we'll be talking a lot about features. I feel like, yeah, it'll be a great wrap up to our summer. That's for sure.
Yeah. All right, excellent. We're at 32 minutes. I think that's great. Thanks for joining, Thomas. I didn't think you were going to be here. I was stressed about having to do it solo.
Yeah, no, I was in the chat and I was like, you look like you're having a lot of fun. I wish I was on. So I was like, okay. When you asked that question, I knew I needed to come on. So yeah.
Oh no, it's fine. Cool. Well, thanks for joining. Oh, hi, Anthony.
Hey, Anthony.
And yeah, we'll be back, like I said, August 24th, I think is. Yeah, August 24th. We'll talk a bit about the Contoso architecture and probably some other stuff. Well, I don't know. I always have
features.
To keep them. Yeah, new features.
I'm thinking new features. I'm excited for that. That's for sure.
Cool. Well, thanks everybody for joining. Thanks, Thomas.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a good day.